Hi, it's Steph, and we're at Lowe's, and they received their spring inventory. Shrubs, evergreens, flowering spring trees, annuals, and more. So let's go ahead and take a look at the March inventory at Lowe's. Did you know that Lowe's carries some concrete pieces? They have some planters, some statuary, sometimes they even have a bench and bird baths. I'll show you a few of them. But this here is a really large concrete rolled rim planter in a sand color. And what's great is that they also have a drain hole on them, because the last thing you want to worry about is having to drill a hole into one of these concrete planters. I don't know how weather safe they would be, especially if you live in a cold climate, but they are really large and make quite an impact once all planted up. You can even use these to plant an evergreen in them so that they could have year-round color. Here are the urn type planters, which are a really classic look, and these are a great size. They have these square ones here, which are really modern looking. Some of the decorative pineapple finials that you can kind of put on top of a wall or even to flank a set of stairs. And then they have some benches. The benches come with a top portion as well as the two corbels, I guess you would call them, that you sit the bench on. And I don't see any prices on any of these, so unfortunately I can't give you the price on them, but I'm certain that you could check it out on their website. And here are some of the bird baths. This one's really pretty. It has like a decorative kind of floral design. I've even seen some that have hummingbirds on them. Here's the bowl for the gray one, which is pretty large. Look at that. Very pretty. And there are all the pedestals. So these come as a two-piece set. You would buy the base with the bowl. Here are a couple of other styles, just so you can get a feel for what they have. And some adorable concrete turtles that you can tuck into a flower bed for a fun little surprise. Sometimes they have dogs too, so I'm guessing that they're still waiting on some more inventory to come in. But I thought that I would share these with you because they do have some fun pieces. My Lowe's also happens to be having a sale on some pots and planters. These here on this table says select pots and planters 40% off. And I even noticed some over here that had the frost-proof sticker. So if you do live in a colder region where you get snow and freezing temperatures, it's important that if you're going to buy glazed ceramic pottery like this, that they are frost resistant, like you see on the tag here, because with the freeze-thaw cycle, you could risk your planter cracking, and you want to avoid that. So just something to look for. But yeah, check out your Lowe's. It's possible that they might be clearancing out some things to make room for new inventory this spring. For the last several years, I've been noticing that they usually have a special buy on some evergreens early on in the season. Last year, there were some Monrovia ones that were $9.98. And this year, they have these containers of the Lowe's House brand planters on a $9.98 special buy as well. So if you're looking to make a hedge of boxwood, what a great price. You can pick up several of these for $9.98 a piece. This is the Green Mountain boxwood, which these, I believe, get to be about 36 inches in height. They grow 5 feet tall by 3 feet wide, so 36-inch width. And they are hardy, very hardy, down to a zone 4, negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. What's great about boxwood is that they can tolerate full sun as well as part shade. So these are probably one of the few evergreens that can actually handle shady conditions, and they're deer resistant. So these are 1-gallon containers for $9.98 of the Green Mountain boxwood. They also have other shrubs on this special, some azaleas, some juniper, nandina, and some small leaf rhododendrons. Here are the small leaf rhododendrons, also known as PJM rhododendrons. What's cool about these is that they have smaller foliage, but also dark foliage. Look how pretty that is. They bloom sooner than the large leaf rhododendrons as well. So you could have a mix in the garden of both the small leaf PJM style as well as the large leaf rhododendrons. Now these typically come with pink blooms like this, and they are a part sun shrub. They're generally a bit smaller and more compact than the large leaf rhododendrons as well. So this one here is reading to have a mature size of 5 foot wide by 5 foot height, and it is hardy down to a zone 4 or negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And these are a great buy at $9.98. have some azaleas on this $9.98 special. This is a pretty one. It looks like it has a pink bloom. Now, in recent years, the azalea has been reclassified as part of the rhododendron family, so I thought that was really interesting. They also like part sun, 3 to 6 hours of morning sun. And when you see that part sun, morning sun is less harsh than afternoon sun. So anything that reads part sun generally refers to having morning sun. It is a flowering shrub that blooms in spring, and what a good price, $9.98. And then here they have a different variety of shrub. It is the Olympic Fire Mountain Laurel. So these are $24.98. And they look like they have a reddish bloom that blooms in spring. How big do these get? Oh, pretty compact, 3 to 4 feet in height, 3 to 4 feet in width, and hardy down to a zone 4 or negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Also a part shade shrub. And currently my store also has a sale on these bare root roses. It's called the Show Pop Plus True Bloom Rose Bush, 2 for $24. Now these are bare root roses, even though they're in a pot here. You want to make sure that you find one that looks healthy, nothing with black or diseased looking canes. And you want to look for one that has a good shape, like a nice open shape with at least 3 good sized canes that are thicker than a pencil. So like this is ideal. And then when you get home, you want to take it out of this peat mixture that's in this container, and you want to plant it in the ground, and you want to plant it at the soil level. There's usually instructions on the back of these on how they should be planted. And roses like a well-draining soil in full sun. And they have some pretty varieties here. This orange one is called True Sincerity. These are Floribunda type roses. And then there's this pink one that's called True Bliss, which is a hybrid tea shrub. And they all grow in different sizes. You can see here on this tea shrub, it grows 5 by 3, very fragrant, and it needs full sun 4 to 6 hours. They also have some yellow varieties down at the bottom here. Here are the other roses that they normally carry. And you can see that now with the more consistent 50-degree Fahrenheit temperatures that we're getting, that they are all starting to leaf out. The growing season is upon us, friends. So here are some of the varieties that they have. Tropicana, which is a hybrid tea. Grand Flora, Langerfeld, it looks like. The Queen Elizabeth, this is a beauty. I saw this one in someone's garden before. Gorgeous, large pink blooms. And when you're buying roses, of course, you want them to have a fragrance. So this one has a light fragrance. This one has a strong fragrance, but really pretty ones. This one's called Intrigue, and it's a Floribunda. Very pretty varieties here. And they range in price, it looks like, the $14.98 for some of them, up to $16.98. And they have the John F. Kennedy rose, the Dolly Parton, Perfume Delight, so lots of different ones. Midas Touch. And Clematis, a beautiful climbing vine that is perennial. Now, Clematis like to have their feet in the shade and their head in the sun. So you can plant them in a place where you have another perennial that kind of shades their roots, and they like it like that. They like to be nice and cool in the soil. They come in different varieties, different lengths or heights, I should say, in terms of how high they will climb, and different size blooms, just a lot of pretty ones to choose from. One important thing would be to know that whatever variety you choose, they're going to be part of one of 3 groups. They're either going to be a group 1, 2, or 3 Clematis. And why that's important is so that you know when to prune it. Some of them will bloom on old wood, some will bloom on new wood. So that is important to know so that you don't cut off that year's blooms. There are lots of different varieties here. This one here is Carnaby, Blue Ravine, Dr. Ruppel, and Jackmani. These 2 are more popular varieties, as is the Nellie Mosier, which sometimes they carry here as well. And this H.F. Young is also a popular lavender colored one. They have Elsa Spath, Pink Fantasy, Gillian Blades, which looks like a white with a little bit of lavender. So lots of really pretty Clematis. And these are $14.98. And I found some perennials, and these are gorgeous. These are one of my favorites for very early spring color, Hellebore. Look at these beauties. Hellebore are stunning. They're mostly hardy in zones 4 through 9, and they like a moist but very well draining soil. They are an understory plant. While they are considered a shade or woodland plant, they do need a little bit of sun in order to set blooms. So the perfect spot to plant them would be under the canopy of a deciduous tree, where in the late fall and winter, the trees lose all of their leaves, allowing your hellebore to get lots of sunlight. And then once the trees start filling up above them with leaves again, They will shade them to keep them happy because they don't like to be in hot sun. They can scorch the foliage and they just won't be as happy. So that's the best way to grow hellebore. So this is a Monrovia variety, Ice and Roses Merry Marble Hellebore. You can see here they like part sun, they are perennial. So these are $24.98. Hellebore take a really long time to grow, which is usually why they are a pricier perennial. They are deer resistant in my garden. Sometimes they will try to nibble on the leaves, but after they taste it, they generally leave it alone, which is great. And you can see here, they need 3 to 6 hours of morning sunlight. This particular variety gets to be 19 to 24 inches in height and 19 to 24 inches in width, and hardy down to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. And look at all of this gorgeous purple color for spring. So beautiful. This is a primrose. It has this gorgeous violet blue color with a yellow eye or center. And look how many buds are getting ready to bloom. So pretty. Has really large foliage. Almost looks like lettuce, right? A rosette or tuft of foliage. Look at that. There's even more buds down there, which is awesome. And let's see the variety on this. The Crescento Blue Primrose. It likes full sun. Keep moist for the first year and 2 times per week after that. I've never grown primrose, but I am going to grab 2 of these because they're so beautiful. They're hardy in zones, it looks like 4 and up. Non-hardy in zones 1 through 3, or down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. They get to be 6 inches in height and 10 inches in width. So pretty. This low growing perennial here is called rock cress. So let's check this out. It's called Audrey Blue Shades Rock Cress. It likes full sun. It is hardy down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, zones 4 and up, and it gets to be 6 inches in height and 36 inches in width. And these are $8.98 for their spring perennials that they have here in the store. Really pretty. Some pretty containers of ready fill spring blooms. Look at this beautiful buttery yellow pansy, and some orange ones and purple, and this light purple that looks blue. So pretty. What a beautiful sign of spring, right? This looks like it could be chives in the center. Now these are the ones that you just purchase the container already made for you and arranged, and then you just put it in your decorative planter. So it will tell you what size planter that this ready fill will fit, and then you just drop it in and water it and you're good to go. So these are $16.98 and they have different color arrangements. They even have some with burgundy flowers like you see there. And some beautiful pansy hanging baskets for $12.98. Now pansies are a beautiful cool weather annual, and they will bloom and bloom until it gets too warm in the summer. And if you can move them to a shady spot during the hottest part of summer and keep them alive, once the weather cools off again in fall, they will continue to bloom for you. And they just have a lot of flower power. So these are really pretty, and they also have different colors on these, shades of purple, both dark and light. They have some yellow ones, and there's even some in burgundy with this really deep purple. In case you've never grown pansies before, they do like full sun. And they have some decorative square planters that look to be about an 8-inch container for $16.98. And if you're looking to make your own spring arrangements, they also have these 8 packs of violas in a purple color as well as yellow for $3.98. If you never got around to planting some spring blooming bulbs back in the fall, look, you can still buy some potted up bulbs that are getting ready to bloom. So they have daffodils, and the great thing about daffodils is that they are perennial. So you could plant these in your garden, enjoy them this season, or even in containers, and then plant them out in the landscape, and then they will come back for you year after year. They also have some tulips, but tulips are not reliably perennial. There are very few varieties that will come back year after year. In general, they are treated as an annual, so you'll get to enjoy them this year. And then if you do keep them in the ground, they might just send up foliage next year, but not necessarily a bloom. So that is the difference between a daffodil, which usually does come back every year, versus tulips, which may sometimes come back. And these are $7.98, both the tulips and the daffodils. And some hyacinth as well. This is the blue hyacinth, which can also come back as perennial for a few years before they start to kind of get a little bit smaller each year. But these also are more likely to return than tulips. They also have pink. These are the same price, $7.98. They also have 1-pint bulb planters for $2.48 in both daffodils and tulips. And a beautiful spring blooming shrub, the lilac. Look at this one. This is the Lilac Flora Festa Pink. Now, lilacs come in pink, purple, and white. This variety happens to be dwarf. It is highly fragrant and reblooming, which they are starting to have more varieties available that are reblooming, which is great because they will bloom in the spring. They'll take a little bit of a break through the hottest part of the summer, and then you might get a few more blooms towards the end of summer, beginning of fall. And this one gets to be 4x4 in size, and it is hardy in zones 3 through 7. And this is an almost 2-gallon for $27.98. And an adorable little evergreen here. This is the Mr. Bowling Ball Arborvitae. And what's fun about this one is that it naturally grows in a round habit, but it also stays pretty compact. So currently it has its winter color, which is a bit of a bronze that happens on the tips. And then as the weather warms up in spring and summer, it will get more green. Now this one is pretty compact. It only gets 2x2 in size. And whenever you see the size on an evergreen or tree, that is an average of its 10-year growth. And this one is hardy in zones 3 through 8. And these are by the New Era brand. And this is a, 1-gallon container for $16.98. A great thing about these shrubs that keep this rounded ball shape naturally is that it won't require any additional maintenance with pruning to keep that shape. Some euonymus, and this one is called Paloma Blanca. And so it will get a bit of white tips on the new growth. It might be too cold for them to do that yet, so that we're not really seeing that white growth, but you can see here how it's all budded up, and this is going to be a lighter, more ivory colored growth. Now, euonymus is not deer resistant in my experience, but these would probably make a great container plant if you were able to keep them protected, especially if you deal with deer where you are. They do like full sun, and here on the tag you can kind of see those ivory colored tips I was talking about. These are $16.98 for this 1-gallon container. They're hardy in zones 6 through 9, and they get to be 2 feet tall by 2 feet wide, which makes them a great evergreen accent for a container. And blueberries. Now, blueberries are a delicious fruit, but they also make a really great ornamental shrub because not only do they set flowers in the spring, this one's actually already all budded up, you get delicious fruit in the summer, and then you get a really pretty burgundy red foliage in the fall. So it would be really fun to incorporate one of these blueberry bushes into an ornamental landscape bed to have something edible and a little bit different planted there. Now with blueberries, I have learned that it is best to get a bigger plant because otherwise you will be waiting probably upwards of 3 years before you get any significant blueberry harvest. I learned that from experience. I had started with a small shrub like this, and it took a few years before I was able to fill a little bowl with blueberries, and that was, of course, if the birds didn't get them first. But this one here is called Blueberry Bonus, and it says it's a high yield shrub, and it's cold hardy, zones 3 through 6, and it gets to be 5 foot height by 5 foot width. And these containers are 1 gallon for $14.98. And some hollies. Now these are a quintessential evergreen that you see around the holidays filled to the brim with red berries. But in order to get red berries on your hollies, there are some varieties that need a male and female shrub to pollinate and for you to get berries. So the female will be the shrub that bears the berries, but there needs to be a male shrub somewhere in order for your female shrub to set fruit. So you can either plant one in your garden, or if you see that your neighborhood already has some red berry bearing hollies, it could be that there is already a pollinator nearby. So this is the China Boy Holly. It is $22.98, and this one gets to be 5 to 8 feet in height and 5 feet in width, hardy down to a zone 5. Some soft touch compact holly. Now holly is very similar to boxwood in the way that it grows and in its foliage. Some varieties naturally grow in a rounded shape, which means you wouldn't have to prune it like boxwood, and also they're less susceptible to diseases. In recent years, the boxwood has been being plagued by boxwood blight, so holly would be a good alternative to get a similar look in a shrub. So this one here is $22.98, and they do like full sun, and it gets to be 2 to 3 feet in height and in width, hardy down to a zone 6. And some dogwoods. Now these come in red twig and yellow twig dogwoods, and you mostly grow these for the winter interest in the color that these twigs provide during those winter months when everything else in the landscape is dormant. Now, the red ones can be really bright and pop against snow, and the yellow ones are also really pretty. This variety here by First Editions looks like it starts a bit yellow, but then the tips get red. See that? This variety here is by First Editions, and it's called Cayenne Dogwood. Bright red stems in winter with fresh green foliage all summer. It likes full sun. It has medium to high water needs. Dogwoods in general, like this, the shrub type dogwood, do like and can handle soil that is a bit more moist. It is hardy in zones 4 through 9, and it gets to be 6 to 8 feet in height and 8 to 10 feet in width. And it's a great shrub for winter interest. These here are 2-gallon containers for $27.98. And some Forsythia, and my Lowe's happens to have 2 in stock at the moment, 2 different kinds. So this First Editions one is called Spring Fling, and these have really pretty golden yellow blooms in very early spring. It's usually one of the first things that you'll see blooming, and a lot of people have them planted as hedges. And so this variety here gets to be 5 to 6 feet in height and in width. And it likes full sun, hardy in zones 5 through 8. The Linwood Gold is the most popular variety that you usually see, and that one's quite large, gets to be anywhere from 10 to 12 feet tall and wide. And this Spring Fling by First Editions is $25.98 for a 2-gallon container. These bloom first, then the lilacs will bloom, and then the rhododendrons and azaleas. So lots of pretty options for blooming shrubs in the springtime. So here is a Proven Winners rhododendron, and look how beautiful the large foliage on this is. So these are a large leaf or broad-leafed evergreen shrub. They keep this beautiful foliage all year round, and you can see that the buds are starting to swell and getting ready to bloom this spring. Now, I do find that the deer like to bite off the blooms on my rhododendrons, so you will have to protect them if you deal with the deer in your garden. Spray them with a repellent. I usually just focus on spraying the buds. They don't seem much interested in the foliage. And this variety here by Proven Winners is called the Dandy Man Color Wheel Rhododendron. And let's see how big this one gets. 4 to 8 feet tall and wide, and needs 6+ hours of sun per day. In general, rhododendrons are understory trees or shrubs. They like to be planted under the canopy of deciduous trees so that they only get filtered sunlight. And it is hardy in USDA growing zones 5 through 9 or down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. And these here are $32.98 for a 2-gallon container. And some Proven Winners azaleas, and these are reblooming azaleas. Now, in the past, the only options for reblooming azaleas were the Encores, but now Proven Winners has some as well, and this is the Perfectamundo Double Purple. And what's great about these is that they will bloom in the spring, and then you will get sporadic reblooming throughout the rest of the season, which is wonderful. And it likes about 4 to 6 hours of sunlight per day. They are a part shade shrub. They get to be 2.5 to 3 feet tall and 3 to 4 feet wide, and they're hardy in USDA growing zones 6 through 9. And these are a almost 2-gallon container for $28.98. They also have the Perfectamundo Red, and let's see if the size is similar. Yeah, 2.5 tall by 3 to 4 feet wide and hardy in zones 6 through 9. They have the Proven Winners Sprinter Boxwood, which is a really popular variety of boxwood, and it says deer proof. All boxwood are deer proof. And let's see how big these get. These are great for hedging options. They get to be 2 to 4 feet tall and wide, so nice compact boxwood. Even great in containers, as you can see there, which looks really nice. And they're hardy in zones 5 through 9. And the Sprinter Boxwood is in a 1-gallon container for $22.98. And another really pretty spring blooming shrub is quince. And this has such a beautiful bloom. They look like small rosettes. Look at this. Isn't that stunning? And when it's all in bloom, you have this explosion of this deep red-orange color. And let's check the specs on this one. So they like sun, and they are hardy in USDA growing zones 5 through 9 or down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. And they get to be 4 to 5 feet tall and wide. So nice medium-sized shrub that you can tuck in the landscape for some spring color. And these here are number 2-gallon containers for $25.98. And here is the proven winner's Forsythia that is just about to burst into bloom with these gorgeous golden yellow flowers. This one is called Show Off, and it gets to be 5 to 6 feet tall and wide, and it is hardy in zones 5 through 8, and it loves full sun. You can see there how pretty that is. Against a tree line, it just really pops. Blooms in spring. And these are number 2-gallon containers for $28.98. They also have larger 5-gallon containers of the proven winners Forsythia Show Off for $44.98. So if you wanted to start with a more mature specimen, they do have some available. Here's the Linwood Gold in the Lowe's House brand container for $21.98. And this is the one that gets to be 10 to 12 feet tall and wide and hardy down to a zone 4. Some Jane Magnolias. Now these are gorgeous magnolias, and they can be grown as a shrub. And as they get a bit older, you can start limbing them up into a small tree. But they have these really pretty tulip-shaped blooms in shades of pink and purple. And these are $29.98 for the Jane Magnolia. Look how pretty that is. They like full sun, and they get to be 10 to 12 feet in height and 8 to 10 feet in width. Speaking of the Encore azaleas, they actually have some in stock. And look how beautiful this dark foliage is. And this is called the Autumn Carnation. It has a pink bloom, and it's medium pink semi-double blooms, measured 2.5 inches across. They like light shade to full sun, and they average 4.5 feet in height and 4 feet in width. And they like a well-drained, slightly acidic soil, hardy in zones 6 through 10. Now azaleas, rhododendrons, camellias, they all like acidic soil. So if you don't have acidic soil, you can buy some fertilizers that will add additional acidity to keep your plants happy. And the Encore azalea is $17.98 for a 1-gallon container. If you grow Encore azaleas in your garden, let me know what your experience is with them. How profusely do they rebloom? And some more evergreens, and these here are a ground cover. And what's great about ground cover evergreens is if you have an area that is difficult to mow, or that maybe is sloping or downhill where you have a hard time retaining mulch, planting a ground cover is a great option. It will suppress weeds, retain moisture, and as it grows, it covers all of that exposed soil and it looks really pretty. So this is blue rug juniper. I actually have quite a few of these planted in my garden, and they've done really well. They're deer resistant. They get a little bit of a blue-gray color to them, and they grow wider than they do high. So they're more of a horizontal growing plant. They actually get to be 1 foot in height, 8 feet in width, and they're hardy, very hardy, down to -30°F or a zone 3. And these here are $9.98. And what I love about these small containers is not only are they more affordable, especially if you need to get quite a few of them to cover a large area, but the root ball also makes them easier to plant. Every once in a while at these box store garden centers, you find a real gem. And several years ago, I found a gorgeous hinoki that is really a statement evergreen in my front walkway. And I often get questions on my channel about it. And it was just one of these dwarf gracilis hinoki cypress that I purchased at one of these box store garden centers, and it has grown beautifully. It is deer resistant in my garden. It likes full sun. It has this really beautiful kind of graceful growth habit, and the foliage almost looks like fans. You can see here, just really beautiful. $29.98 for this shrub. And in terms of size, it says it gets to be 6 feet in height, 4 feet in width. Mine has now surpassed that, but it's been planted for about 12 years. It probably is about 6 feet in height and maybe about 5 or so feet in width, but beautiful and very hardy, down to -20°F or a zone 4. And this golden beauty, which you've heard me talk about at length on these videos. I really love these. The gold mop cypress or the false mop cypress, these are stunning. They have such a beautiful, graceful kind of growth habit, and this stunning golden color, which really pops against green in the landscape. Look at the contrast on that. Gorgeous. If you want a beautiful garden, give yourself some contrast with evergreens, some green, some yellow, and some blue, and you are good to go. It makes a palette that's really pleasing to the eye. So this one here likes full sun in order for it to keep this really golden color. If you have it in too much shade, it'll start to turn kind of like a muddy green, like what you see here on the inside foliage. So definitely give it plenty of sun to keep this coloring. $13.98 for these 1-gallon containers. And they get to be 3 to 5 feet in height, 2 to 4 feet in width, and very hardy, down to zone 4 or negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. $13.98 is a great price for these 1 gallon containers. Look at that. Now, these can sometimes outgrow their space, and if they do, I have about 3 of them in my garden. One of them got a little bit too large for where I had it planted in my front walkway, so what I did was I limbed it up and pruned it into a small topiary tree, and I can link that video below for you to check out if you're interested. And another real beauty, the blue star juniper. As you can tell, I really love conifers and evergreens, especially living in a cold climate. Having this much interest in the garden in the winter when all of your perennials are dormant is really invaluable. It still gives you a garden and something beautiful to look at. So the blue star juniper, this is a low growing mounding type evergreen. It is deer resistant. It has a gorgeous blue gray color. It does need full sun in order to keep this really pretty coloring. They only get to be about 3 to 4 feet in diameter, and that is at about 12 years. Mine are 12 years old now in my landscape, and they're all about 3 by 4 or so in size and only about 18 inches in height. So they stay really compact, which makes them a great option for a front of a border. So it says here, average mature size, 2 to 3 feet in height, 3 to 4 feet in width. The width is accurate. The height, I don't think they would get much higher than 18 inches, at least in my growing experience. And these are hardy to a zone 4 or down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. $21.98 for this almost 2 gallon container. Here's what I was talking about. A gold shrub, a blue shrub, and a green shrub. They look so beautiful together. Another round shape evergreen. This is the little giant Arborvitae. Now this one gets a little bit bigger than the Mr. Bowling Ball that we looked at. It's also a different type of Arborvitae. Now this is along the lines of the green giant Arborvitae, which means it would be more deer resistant than some other varieties of Arborvitae, which the deer tend to really love. This one likes full sun. You can see it naturally grows in that rounded habit. They're $13.98. And it gets to be 4 by 4 in size and hardy down to a zone 3 or negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Arborvitaes also love water, so make sure that you water these adequately, especially when you newly plant them or during any times of drought. Lots of flowering trees, shade trees, and fruit trees available. So we'll take a quick look at some of them. So this is a Kusa dogwood, which likes part sun, $36.98 for these, and they look to be a 3.5 gallon container. And this one here is a medium-sized tree getting 20 by 20 in height and in width, hardy down to a zone 5 or negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and that is a white dogwood. They also have really beautiful fall color with usually turning a red foliage, which is really nice. And then here they have some cherry trees. So this is the Kwanzaa flowering cherry, which typically has these light pink blooms. It blooms in spring, $39.98. And this one likes full sun, and it gets to be 30 feet in height, 20 feet in width, hardy down to a zone 5 or negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's see what else they have here for flowering trees. A thundercloud flowering plum. Now this tree, I did have one in my garden. I don't find it to be a very strong tree. I believe they are prone to disease. Let me know if you have any experience with them. We did have to take ours down because it did get unhealthy. It did get infested with something, which we weren't sure what, but the tree was dying, so we had to get it taken down. $42.98 for this thundercloud. It's really beautiful because it has dark foliage, which makes a nice contrast in the landscape against all the green. It's just not a very healthy tree from what I understand. And some more Kwanzaa cherries, and they have some white chiffon proven winners Rose of Sharon trees here, and they look like they're in a 5 gallon container for $69.98. They have the white chiffon, and then this one is lavender chiffon, which is gorgeous. Has like kind of like a bluish purple color. Look at this. So pretty. Now these are a standard form, so they're not going to get very big. 8 to 12 feet in height, 4 to 6 feet in width, and they're hardy in zones 5 through 9, and they like full sun. Rose of Sharon, sometimes you have to be careful with the varieties that you're buying because if they're not sterile, they drop seeds everywhere, and then you end up with Rose of Sharon babies all over that you might have to weed out, which can become quite a job. My mom's neighbor has a hedge of Rose of Sharon, and every spring my mom finds a ton of seedlings when she's out in the yard. So something to keep in mind. And some pink flowering dogwoods, which is also beautiful. Part sun, $64.98 for this one. It's in a bit bigger container. It looks like maybe a 7 gallon. And it has a nice shape, this one. Now, anytime that you're going to purchase one of these trees at the garden center, my recommendation would be to pull the tree out, put it in the main aisle here, and take a look at it from all directions. Make sure it has a nice shape, because if it has a really terrible shape from the get-go, you can't will it to grow a nice looking branch, right? So you want to make sure that you're starting with something that already has a somewhat decent shape that you can prune further to get it how you like it. So something that I always think is a good idea. More dogwoods and then some fruit trees. A Cherokee Princess dogwood. Oh, that is so pretty. Looks like it has white blooms as well. And this one gets to be 20 by 20 in size, hardy to a zone 5, part sun. $99.98 for this one. It is a bit taller and has a larger container. Will tell you, I was over at the Home Depot last week. I made a video. You can check that out on my channel. Their fruit trees were a little bit more money. So these here are $36.98. I want to say that theirs were around the $69 price range. And so here we're looking at some plums, and they also have some other fruit trees we'll take a look at in a second. But most fruit trees require at least 2 in order for them to pollinate each other. I know that is the case with apples as well as pears. Peaches are self-pollinating, which means you don't need a partner tree. And I'm not sure about plums and cherries though. So let me know in the comments if you know. So here are some apple trees. Now these are how much? Let's see. $59.98, but it is a bit bigger. So it could be that the size is what's affecting the price here. These look like they're in a 5-gallon container for $59.98, which I believe is still $10 less than they were at the Home Depot. So if you are looking to shop for fruit trees, take a look at both of them and compare, and you can make your decision that way. Some apple varieties, they have the Gala semi-dwarf apple. That one gets to be 10 to 20 feet in height and 10 to 20 in width. And then they also have, what other kinds of apples here? Gala is the only one that I've seen so far. As far as peaches go, these are usually self-pollinating, so one will do it and you'll get some fruit. This is the Red Haven Semi-Dwarf Peach, and they get to be 10 to 20 feet in height and in width. What's really fun about all of these fruit trees too is that you get beautiful blossoms in the spring. So not only are they edible, but they can also be ornamental in the landscape. And these peach trees are $36.98. Contender peach is another variety, and then there is a Belle of Georgia semi-dwarf peach as well. Some pears, and let's see what kinds they have in stock. They have an Oriental pear and Kiefer pear. And there's another variety here. That's a Kiefer. And this one is an Ayers semi-dwarf pear. The Ayers gets to be 10 to 20, height and width seems to be the average around here for those. A Magnolia, this is the Bracken's Brown Beauty, and it has the most gorgeous, shiny green foliage. And then the back of the leaves turn a really pretty kind of brown, leathery color. They almost look like suede. Look at that. These look really beautiful, cut into arrangements for the holidays, to make wreaths with. They're just really beautiful. And you get these really large, white, fragrant blooms. Let's see how much this one is. Now these show up here once in a while at Lowe's. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Bracken's Brown Beauty Magnolia. It likes full sun. They're $139 for this pretty large one. It looks like maybe a 7 to 10 gallon, and it gets to be 20 to 30 feet in height, 15 to 20 in width, hardy down to a zone 6. So beautiful. I've been after one of these for a while, but I haven't yet found the perfect spot to plant it. And I'm being more intentional now about what I bring home if I don't have a planned spot. I mean, I still do it, but I'm trying to be a little bit better about it. And lots of Arborvitae in stock for all of your living fence and privacy screening needs. Now the spring is a great time to put up all of those living fences, and Arborvitae are a great option. So they have the green giant as well as the emerald green, and there are some key differences between the two of them. Now Arborvitae do like water, so especially when you plant a new hedge, you want to keep after the watering to make sure they don't dry out, because that is one of the fastest ways to kill your Arborvitae. And And I will link that video about the key differences between the green giant as well as the emerald green down below for you to check out. In general, one of them the emerald green grows a little bit more compact, and the green giant gets pretty giant, as the name suggests. And the green giant is also more deer resistant, and the emerald green is not. So I have a video that shows the real life application of these as living fences in my neighbor's yard and in my parents' yard, and I'll link that below. These are 5.5 gallon containers for $59.98. Now they do have contractor pack pricing on these evergreens. And so if you purchase, let's see, it looks like when you buy 16 or more, instead of $59.98, you would pay $53.98. And it is the same price for the green giant as well as the emerald green. And some heather, which is a really late winter, early spring blooming shrub, and has these really pretty pink blooms. Look at that. This looks really beautiful in containers. They do well in a well-draining area, so they do not like to sit in moisture. These are actually Mediterranean plants, so they like it kind of sandy and dry. So if you have a lot of moisture over the winter where it's planted, they can sometimes not return for you. So you want to make sure that you plant it either in a container with proper drainage or even in rock gardens. These are great plants for. So this variety is called Mediterranean Pink Heather, and it is a flowering shrub. It blooms in spring and in winter, and it provides winter interest because it looks like an evergreen shrub when it's not in bloom. These are $13.98, and let's see the size on them. They're pretty compact, 1 foot height, 2 feet width, and they're hardy only to a zone 6. Very pretty coloring on these. I'm going to pick up 2 of these really beautiful violet purple colored primroses, and that brings us to the end of the March inventory here at Lowe's. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you on the next one.